Have you ever wondered if it's possible to create a perfectly balanced living world and then seal it inside a glass bottle? I'm talking about a miniature ecosystem that completely takes care of itself. It has its own rain, its own atmosphere, and its own little cleanup crew, needing absolutely nothing from the outside world except for a little bit of light. I know, it sounds like something straight out of science fiction, but I promise you, it's entirely real.
And if you need proof, you don't have to look any further than the legendary bottle garden started by a man named David Latimer. Get this, he sealed this massive bottle called the Carboy back in 1960 with just a single spiderwort plant inside. And more than 60 years later, it is still going strong. He only opened it once back in '72 for a quick splash of water, but other than that, it's been a completely self-sufficient world. You see, this isn't just a plant in a jar. It's the ultimate proof that a perpetual ecosystem is possible.
So seeing that probably brings up two huge questions. First, how in the world does the science work that allows a sealed world like this to not only survive, but actually flourish for decades? And second, what are the exact steps and materials you need to build your very own? Well, that's exactly what we're going to break down in this explainer.
To understand how to build one, we've got to grasp the science first. You can think of a sealed terrarium as a tiny biological machine. It's powered by two invisible, perfectly synchronized engines that recycle every single thing the inhabitants need to live. The only thing it needs from us, from the outside world, is light.
So what are these two engines? Well, they're the water cycle and the carbon cycle. A good way to think about them is as the terrarium's own internal rain machine and its personal, self-regulating atmosphere. When these two cycles are in perfect balance, the whole system can sustain itself pretty much indefinitely. So let's take a look at how each one actually works. It's incredible how simple, but just elegant, this water cycle is. First, light gives it the energy it needs. It gently warms up the air inside the jar, which causes water to evaporate from the soil and also from the leaves of the plants. That's a process called transpiration. So now you have this moist, warm air, which rises and hits the cooler surface of the glass. What happens then? Condensation. It turns back into little liquid water droplets. And finally, gravity just takes over. The droplets get bigger, they get heavy, and they run down the sides of the glass, basically creating rain that rewaters the soil. The system literally waters itself, forever.
Okay, now for the other half of this life support system, the air. During the day, the plants are busy with photosynthesis. They're taking in carbon dioxide, using light to create food, and as a byproduct, they release oxygen. But at the same time, the plants and all the little microscopic decomposers in the soil are all respiring. They use that oxygen to break down organic matter for energy, and in doing so, they release carbon dioxide right back into the air. What you get is this perfect closed loop. The air is just constantly being recycled. What one organism breathes out, another one breathes in, keeping a perfectly balanced atmosphere inside the jar.
Okay, so now that we've got the science down, we can get practical. A successful terrarium isn't just about picking cool plants. It's built on a really carefully engineered foundation of non-living layers. Each one has a very specific job to do, and getting this foundation right is absolutely critical for the long-term health of your little world.
There are 3 layers that are totally non-negotiable. At the very bottom, you need a drainage layer for any excess water. Right above that, a filtration layer to keep things fresh and clean. And then on top of that is the substrate. That's the specialized soil where your plants are going to live. Let's break down what goes into each one, and we'll start with that really crucial filtration layer.
The filtration layer is made of activated charcoal, and its job is, well, it's vital. You can think of it as the terrarium's liver. It's a type of carbon that's been treated to create millions of microscopic pores, which gives it this huge surface area. This structure allows it to trap, the technical term is adsorb, all sorts of nasty organic compounds and toxins that get released when things decompose. It prevents bad smells and keeps the whole environment clean. Now, a really critical note here, this is not the same stuff as BBQ briquettes. Those have chemical additives that will absolutely kill your ecosystem. You have to use horticultural activated charcoal.
Next up is the substrate. And you can't just use soil from your garden. It's way too dense and it'll get compacted over time. You need a special mix that's designed for a tropical, sealed environment. This recipe right here is a fantastic starting point. You use cocoa coir because it holds moisture, then orchid bark and sand to create little air pockets and give it structure. And finally, some worm castings, which act as a slow-release organic fertilizer. This blend gives you that perfect balance between holding enough water and having the great drainage and aeration that plant roots need to thrive.
So, with the foundation built, it's time to add the real magic. To make a terrarium truly self-sustaining, you need to make it bioactive. That's just a fancy word that means you're adding living organisms to create a self-cleaning ecosystem. Basically, we're bringing in a tiny janitorial staff, a cleanup crew of little critters that will constantly work to break down waste and recycle nutrients.
The absolute dream team for this job is made up of two main players, springtails and isopods. Yeah, they're tiny, but they are the real engines of renewal in your sealed world. And they don't just hang out together. They perform very distinct, specialized jobs that create this amazing, synergistic cleaning system.
The key here is their division of labor. Springtails are your first line of defense. They are mold specialists. They eat fungal spores before they can ever grow into a problem. Isopods, on the other hand, they're the heavy lifters. They're the ones breaking down tougher stuff like fallen leaves. And as a bonus, they're always burrowing around, which aerates the soil, keeping it from getting compacted and making it a healthy place for plant roots. Together, they make sure that any waste, a dead leaf, a bit of mold, gets quickly turned back into nutrients for the plants. It's perfect recycling.
All right, you've assembled the layers, you've added the plants, and you've introduced the cleanup crew. The terrarium is built, but now comes the most delicate part, calibration. This is where you fine-tune the external inputs, mainly light and water, to get that stable, long-term balance before you seal it up for good.
Let's start with what is easily the single most important rule of all. A sealed glass jar in direct sunlight becomes an oven. No joke. The greenhouse effect will shoot the temperature up inside and literally cook your plants. It's a catastrophic failure. So you absolutely must place your terrarium where it will get bright, but always in direct light. Near a north-facing window is usually perfect.
Now, how do you know if you've put in the right amount of water? Well, you're looking for what experts call the light fog standard. This is your visual cue that everything is perfectly balanced. In an ideal terrarium, you'll see a light mist or fog form on the glass during the warmest part of the day, which then completely clears up by nighttime. If you see that happening, congratulations, your internal rain machine is perfectly calibrated.
Of course, things might not be perfect right off the bat, but the good news is the fixes are usually pretty simple. If you're seeing heavy condensation that just never clears up, you've just got too much water in there. No big deal. Just take the lid off for a day or two and let some of it evaporate. If you see mold that keeps coming back, your cleanup crew is a little overwhelmed. Time to add more springtails. And if your plants look pale and kind of stretched out, that's a classic sign they need more light. Just move them to a brighter spot or get a small LED light.
So to wrap it all up, building a world in a bottle that can last for decades really comes down to three main principles. First, you have to achieve that perfect water balance, the light fog. Second, you need to establish a thriving bioactive cleanup crew to handle all the waste. And third, you have to manage your inputs. Give it the right kind of light, and every once in a while, prune your plants and just leave the cuttings inside to return their nutrients back to the soil.
And all this really leaves us with a final thought. We've just designed a tiny, closed world that sustains itself perfectly through balanced cycles, complete recycling, and the careful management of a single energy source from the outside. It's a powerful, living demonstration of how ecosystems are supposed to work. So the question is, if this is possible on such a small scale, what lessons can this beautiful little bottled world offer us about the much, much larger one that we all share?